The radio was dead, the unit silent, yet her footsteps spoke louder than all of them. Why did silence feel heavier than gunfire? Captain Elena Varga pressed her hand against the cold wall, listening, not to voices, not to commands, but to the echo of her own breath inside her helmet. The mission brief had been clear: a remote village, intel suggesting enemy movement, reconnaissance only. In and out. No engagement unless absolutely necessary. But that was before the comms cut, before her unit vanished into shadows she couldn't reach. She wasn't supposed to be alone. The dust in the air clung to her lashes, making her eyes burn. The ground carried the faint rhythm of her boots like a drum, each step reminding her that time was running, and somewhere out there, her people, her soldiers, were waiting. Or worse. But there was something she hadn't told them. Not yet. Something that made her silence heavier than theirs. The night air carried a dry metallic taste like rusted iron. She adjusted the sling on her rifle, hands steady but heart unsettled. She trained herself for this: silence, separation, the unbearable wait for orders that might never come. She knew discipline was survival, but knowing and feeling weren't the same thing. She thought of Morales, always the one cracking a joke during patrols, even when the desert heat blistered their lips. He had a little sister back home, sent her postcards from every deployment. "She collects stamps now, Captain," he'd said with a grin. "She thinks I'm traveling the world, not crawling through sand." Where was Morales now? She thought of Singh, the medic, sharp eyes, sharper words. He carried photos tucked inside his vest. His daughter's birthday had been 2 days ago. He'd shown Elena a grainy video of the girl blowing out candles, her tiny voice shouting, "Come home soon, Papa." Where was Singh now? The silence mocked her. She tapped her earpiece again, knowing it was useless. Static hissed for half a breath, then nothing. She almost whispered into it anyway, almost called their names, almost broke the rules she'd lived by for 15 years. But she swallowed the urge. Noise could kill, desperation could betray, and fear could consume. Still, the silence demanded an answer. Her boots scuffed against broken stone. The village was abandoned, or maybe waiting. Doors hung open like broken mouths, windows shattered. A curtain moved once, then stilled. Elena stopped, her hand raised instinctively. No signal returned. No shadow of her unit, only her pulse. She wasn't new to this. Afghanistan, Syria, places she never mentioned when home on leave, places she carried like scars under her skin. She'd led men into firefights, pulled them out when their legs gave way. She'd tasted loss, swallowed grief without chewing. But this silence was different. This wasn't combat. This was absence. And absence was worse. She crouched near a doorway, pressing her shoulder against splintered wood. The night smelled of ash, faint smoke, a fire long dead. She could almost hear voices, children once playing, mothers once shouting, laughter tangled with the clatter of pots, ghosts of normal life. Now nothing. Her eyes traced a symbol spray-painted on the wall, fresh, black paint dripping like blood, enemy sign. She exhaled slowly, lips tightening. They were here, or had been here, and her unit had walked straight into it. Elena closed her eyes just for a beat. She felt the weight of her choices pressing down. They looked to her for confidence, for steadiness. She delivered it like she always did, stone-faced, unflinching. But inside, something else stirred. A question that had followed her from base to battlefield, from one broken country to another. How many more times? How many more times could she send people forward, knowing not all would come back? How many more times could she write the letters no officer wanted to write? And why was she still here? Her father's voice rose in her memory. "Duty isn't about choice, Elena. It's about carrying what others can't." He'd been a soldier too, long before her. She promised herself she wouldn't follow, promised her mother she wouldn't. Yet when the towers fell, when the world turned, she'd been 19 and burning with the same fire he once carried. She signed the papers with steady hands, even as her heart cracked open. Now, decades later, she wondered, had that fire saved her or consumed her? She shifted, scanning the alley. A faint sound, a stone falling, not wind, not animal. She froze, breath locked. The sound didn't repeat, but she felt eyes, watching, waiting. Her finger brushed the trigger guard. Not yet, not unless she had to. She remembered Morales again, his laugh, his postcards. Singh, his daughter's smile on a flickering phone screen, faces like anchors. She wasn't just carrying a rifle, she was carrying them. She pushed forward, each step careful, each corner a question. And then she saw it, scuffed tracks in the dirt, boots, not hers, several pairs leading deeper into the village. Her chest tightened, relief because they weren't gone, fear because they weren't safe. She followed, pulse quickening. The trail curved, broke, reformed. A handprint on a wall, smeared, blood. She leaned closer, no paint. Red paint, deliberate, a sign. She swallowed hard. It wasn't random, they were being led. She pulled back into shadow, forcing her breath calm. Her mind raced. If the enemy had her unit, why no gunfire? Why no shouts? Why nothing? Unless silence was the trap. Her heartbeat filled the emptiness, pounding louder than gunfire. She gritted her teeth. She couldn't wait, couldn't call, couldn't trust the silence. So she chose movement. One step, then another. And with each one, her footsteps carried the weight of a truth unspoken, one that tied her to this place, to this mission, to the silence itself. A truth that would change everything. But not yet. Why did the trail feel too perfect? Captain Elena Varga slowed her pace, every instinct screaming that this wasn't rescue, it was choreography. The scuffed boots in the dirt hadn't scattered like men under fire. They lined up, deliberate, almost rehearsed. Her hand grazed the wall as she moved deeper into the hollow of the village. The concrete felt cool against her fingertips, pitted with bullet scars from battles that belonged to another time. The moonlight bled silver across rooftops, throwing long shadows that clung to the edges of every doorway. She thought of how they'd all walked into this mission hours ago, her unit behind her, chatter low, nerves steady. Morales had asked if they'd be back before sunrise. Singh had rolled his eyes. You always ask that, and no, Morales, we won't. Elena had only smirked, keeping her voice flat when she answered. You'll live, and if not, I'll kill you myself. The men had laughed, tension breaking. That laughter echoed now, cruel in its absence. Her throat tightened. She wanted to hear it again. Instead, she heard footsteps. Not hers, not steady, faint, dragging. She crouched low, pressing herself into shadow. Breath slowed, finger on trigger. The sound grew closer, shuffling, labored, then a pause. A figure emerged at the end of the street, stumbling. Uniform torn, helmet missing, face hidden in shadow. The soldier leaned against a wall, knees threatening collapse. Her heart caught. Recognition came like a blade. Morales. Elena. His voice cracked, hoarse, like sand dragged over glass. His arm was wrapped tight across his ribs, dark stains glistening. She moved fast but careful, scanning the rooftops, the alleys. Too easy, too sudden. Still, instinct pulled her forward. Morales, she whispered, gripping his shoulder as she pulled him into cover. Where's the rest? His eyes darted, unfocused, searching her face like he wasn't sure she was real. His lips trembled. Gone. The word struck harder than a rifle round. Gone how? She pressed. He shook his head, face collapsing. Trapped, pulled into the old schoolhouse. They knew we were coming. His voice broke, chest heaving. He winced as pain carved lines into his face. Her stomach twisted. The schoolhouse, of course, every village had one, big enough, central, symbolic. And a perfect place for a trap. She pressed her hand against his wound. Warmth met her palm, sticky. His blood, real, not staged, he was here, he was alive. But his eyes, they flicked past her shoulder, once, twice. She froze, her muscles turned to stone. Slowly she turned her head. A figure on the roof, black silhouette, watching. The rifle came up, too late. The silhouette vanished into the dark. Her breath hitched. The trap was alive. They weren't waiting anymore, they were watching. Elena, Morales rasped, gripping her sleeve with surprising force. His voice was wet now, bubbling. Don't let them take Singh. He wouldn't talk, he would. His words dissolved into a cough, crimson spraying her glove. Her chest ached. She pressed harder on the wound, knowing it wouldn't matter. His pulse fluttered under her hand, fragile, retreating. Morales swallowed, forcing sound from his fatting lungs. "Captain, you remember that joke I told you about the postcards?" His lips quirked, a ghost of a smile. "Don't tell my sister the truth, not yet. Let her keep thinking." His head rolled slightly, eyes fixed past her. The light in them thinned, dimmed, then stilled. Silence. The silence she hated. Her breath shuddered, hands gripping his uniform tighter than she should have. She wanted to shake him, to drag him back, to curse him for leaving. Instead, she closed his eyes with two trembling fingers. Her footsteps spoke louder now, not because she moved, but because she didn't. The weight of staying still, of choosing whether to move forward or collapse beside him, thundered in her ears. Her unit was in the schoolhouse. Morales was gone. She was alone again. But not entirely. That silhouette on the roof, someone knew she was here. Someone had seen her grief, her pause, her hesitation, and hesitation was dangerous. She pulled Morales's dog tags, slipping them into her vest. Her jaw locked, her chest burned. There was no time for mourning, not yet. She moved. Through alleys, hugging walls, each step slower now. Her boots whispered across dirt, careful not to betray her. The schoolhouse loomed ahead, its broken windows like empty eyes, its frame sagging but defiant. She could almost feel the hum of presence inside. Singh was in there, the others too. But the silence told her something else, something worse. They wanted her to come, alone. Her throat tightened again, this time with something sharper than grief. Rage, controlled, buried, but alive. She stopped at a corner, kneeling, rifle angled. Her breath came steady, but inside her chest, a storm churned. She thought of Singh's daughter, her birthday video. She thought of Morales's sister, still waiting for postcards. She thought of the men she'd led into this. Men who believed she could always find a way out. But what if this time she could? Her reflection wavered in a shard of broken glass on the ground. Dirt smeared across her face, sweat streaking her brow. Eyes dark, hollowed by more than fatigue. She barely recognized herself. For a moment she wasn't Captain Elena Varga. She wasn't a soldier, wasn't a leader. She was just a woman kneeling in the dirt, clutching a rifle, haunted by promises she couldn't keep. And then the memory hit. Her father's funeral, rows of soldiers in uniform, the folded flag in her hands, her mother's eyes empty, broken. Elena had stood tall that day, face dry, back straight, but inside she'd been screaming. She hadn't told her men this. She hadn't told anyone, but every mission, every risk was her way of answering that scream, carrying what others couldn't. And it was killing her. She blinked hard, forcing the memory away. This wasn't the time. This wasn't the place. But the weight of it pressed on her ribs, stealing her air. A noise broke through, soft, deliberate. A door creaking open inside the schoolhouse. She froze. Then another noise, faint, a muffled cry. Sing! Her lungs seized, relief, terror, both at once. She pressed against the wall, heart slamming. If she moved now, she'd walk straight into their jaws. If she waited, Singh might not survive. Her father's voice whispered in her head again. Duty isn't about choice. It's about carrying what others can't. Her grip tightened, her breath slowed. And then, without another thought, she stepped from the shadows. Toward the schoolhouse, toward her men, toward whatever silence waited inside. What made her step forward when every instinct begged her to stay hidden? Captain Elena Varga's boots touched broken glass as she crossed the open ground toward the schoolhouse. Each shard cracked like gunfire underfoot, and yet no shots came. Not yet. The silence stretched long, bending the night into something unholy. Her rifle tracked the black windows, her eyes never resting in one place. Every doorway was a mouth, every shadow, a throat waiting to swallow her whole. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't naive. 15 years in combat had burned those flaws out of her, but there was something worse than caution gnawing at her bones. Singh's muffled cry. She heard it again, faint, choked, a sound that didn't belong in silence. Her pulse surged. She slid along the wall, hands searching for the door's frame. It was warped, hanging crooked, the wood splintered. She paused, pressing her cheek against the cold stone, listening. Breathing, not hers, close. Her hand tightened on the grip. She steadied her breath, counted to 3 in her head, and then, with a sudden motion, she slipped inside. The dark swallowed her. The air was different here, thick, sour, clinging with the scent of mildew and old smoke. A faint flicker of light trembled down a hallway, like a candle fighting for its last breath. She advanced slowly, rifle raised, every nerve stretched to breaking. Her boots whispered across dusty tile. Then she saw it. Singh. He was on his knees in the glow of that trembling light, arms bound, blood streaking down his temple. His head hung, chest heaving in shallow pulls. A whisper of his strength remained, but it was enough. Her breath caught. She wanted to rush to him, to cut him free, to shoulder his weight. But her eyes scanned the rest of the room, searching for the teeth of the trap. There they were. 3 figures in black, rifles slung, watching from the shadows, faces covered, eyes glinting, silent, still. They hadn't fired, they hadn't shouted, they wanted her to see, they wanted her to step further in. Elena's mind raced. Options, angles, none clean, none good. Her father's words echoed, carrying what others can't. Her men, Singh, Morales's ghost still clinging to her. Her finger rested against the trigger, pressure building, just enough to know she was alive, not enough to fire. Not yet. One of the masked figures shifted, stepping forward. Slowly, deliberate, no weapon raised, just a presence heavy as stone. He spoke, not in English, not in a tongue Elena understood. The words were low, measured, spoken like a chant. His hand gestured, not toward Singh, not toward her rifle, but toward her. She stiffened. She didn't understand the language, but she understood the meaning. They wanted her. Her chest tightened. For a moment she felt the pull. A dark thought whispered, if you give yourself, Singh lives, maybe the others too. But another voice cut through. Morales's last breath, begging her not to let Singh be taken. Her jaw locked. Her answer came not in words but in silence. She stepped sideways into cover, rifle snapping up. A single breath, a single squeeze. The candlelight exploded with sound. The first figure dropped. The others burst into motion, rifles flaring. Bullets chewed the wall where her head had been. Dust rained down. Her shoulder slammed against concrete, lungs burning. She fired again, short bursts controlled, her mind a razor-slicing chaos. One dropped, another staggered back, screaming through fabric. Singh shouted her name. She darted forward, a sprint through broken light. Her knife flashed, severing the rope at his wrists. He collapsed into her arms, heavier than she remembered. Blood soaked her sleeve. Captain, his voice rasped, weak. I told them nothing, nothing. She tightened her grip. I know. More footsteps thundered from deeper in the schoolhouse. More shadows moving. No time. She dragged Singh upright, slinging his arm over her shoulder. His weight bore down, but she didn't falter. She pulled him toward the doorway, every muscle screaming, every breath ragged. Gunfire ripped behind them, bullets snapping past. The wall spat shards of plaster. She pushed forward, hauling him into the night air, into the open. The silence was gone now. The trap was sprung. She half-carried, half-dragged Singh across the courtyard, her boots sinking in dust. He stumbled, legs weak, but his teeth clenched. He wouldn't let go. Voices shouted behind them, foreign, furious. Muzzle flashes sparked from the windows. She pushed him down behind a broken wall, dropping beside him, chest heaving. She checked his pulse, fast but strong. His eyes burned into hers, fierce even through pain. "You shouldn't have come," he gasped. Her throat closed. "I don't leave my men." His hand caught her wrist, trembling. "But you carry too much." The words cut deep. Too much, always too much. She wanted to answer, to tell him about the weight, about the truth she'd buried beneath years of silence. The truth she hadn't told Morales. The truth she hadn't told Singh. The truth that tethered her here, again and again, when she should have walked away long ago. But the words stuck. Instead, she pressed her forehead briefly to his, a soldier's vow. And then she looked back toward the schoolhouse. Figures were pouring out now, rifles glinting under the moon. The night had broken, the silence was gone. And yet inside her, another silence grew, the silence of what she hadn't confessed, the silence of what bound her tighter than any rope. It was coming, but not yet. How do you run when the man beside you can barely stand? Captain Elena Varga tightened her grip around Singh's waist, dragging him into the cover of a collapsed wall. His weight pressed heavy into her shoulder, every step a struggle against gravity. His boots scraped the dirt, leaving a trail she knew the enemy could follow. But stopping meant dying. The night cracked open with gunfire. Rounds struck stone, splintering fragments into her face. She kept her head low, guiding Singh forward with quiet urgency. Her heart thundered. Each beat felt louder than the bullets. "Captain," Singh muttered, voice frayed, "leave me." She didn't answer. "You know it's the smart call," he insisted, blood seeping through his sleeve. "They want you, not me." Her jaw clenched. "Shut up." "Captain." "I said shut up." Her tone was sharp, harsher than she intended. Singh fell silent, though his weight sagged heavier against her. His breath rasped like sandpaper. She forced her eyes forward, scanning. The alley stretched ahead, dark but open, too open. The schoolhouse loomed behind, voices spilling into the night. They were spreading out now, hunting. She needed cover, she needed time. And she needed to keep Singh alive. A flash of movement cut across the rooftops, shadows racing. They weren't just chasing on foot, they were circling, tightening. Her pulse spiked. She pushed Singh into a narrow passage between buildings, the walls pressing tight around them. The stench of rotting trash filled her nose. She ignored it, focusing on the rhythm of Singh's breath, the scrape of his boots. "Almost there," she whispered, though she didn't know where there was. His laugh was dry, bitter. "You always say that." Her throat caught. He wasn't wrong. How many times had she told her men those same words? How many times had it been true? How many times had it not? She swallowed hard, forcing her voice steady. "This time I mean it." They broke into a courtyard, the moonlight spilling wide across broken stone. For a moment there was quiet. Too quiet. She scanned the rooftops, empty, the alleys still. Her chest tightened. She knew this quiet, the kind that came just before impact. Then it came. The crack of a rifle. The wall beside her face exploded, shards slicing her cheek. She shoved Singh down, covering him with her body as another shot tore through the night. "Sniper!" Her blood ran cold. She couldn't see the shooter, but she felt the aim, precision, patient. They weren't spraying bullets anymore. They wanted her pinned. Singh's hand gripped her arm. "Elena, don't." Her eyes locked on his. For a moment she wasn't Captain Varga, she was just Elena, a friend, a daughter, a woman kneeling in the dirt holding someone who trusted her too much. And in his gaze she saw it, the reflection of the truth she hadn't spoken. That this wasn't about duty anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. She blinked hard, tearing her eyes away. Focus. Later, not now. She dragged Singh behind a pile of rubble, shielding him. Her mind raced. She needed to move, but with him bleeding and the sniper watching, movement was death. unless she made herself louder than the silence. She unclipped a smoke grenade from her vest, yanked the pin with her teeth and rolled it across the courtyard. The hiss erupted, clouds billowing into the moonlight. Shadows twisted, swallowed. She seized Singh's arm again. Now. They moved, her legs burning as she hauled him forward. The smoke wrapped them, a ghostly shield. Bullets cracked through the haze, but without sight, the shots went wide. Her lungs ached as she pulled him into another alley, ducking behind a low wall. The smoke thinned behind them, but it bought seconds, maybe a minute. Singh collapsed, gasping. His head rolled back, sweat shining across his face. She tore open her med kit, hands steady even as her chest shook. She pressed gauze against his wound, ignoring his hiss of pain. "Stay with me," she ordered. His lips twitched, bossy as ever. She almost smiled, almost. Blood seeped through the bandage, hot against her palms. She pressed harder, the smell metallic, bitter. "You're not dying here." His eyes searched hers, dark and fierce even through pain. "You can't save everyone." The words stabbed deep. She wanted to argue. She wanted to scream at him for daring to say it, but her throat locked. Because he was right. She hadn't saved morals. She hadn't saved too many before him, and she hadn't told Singh why she kept coming back to places like this. Her silence was heavier than his wound. She exhaled slowly, forcing the thoughts down. She couldn't bleed here, not the way he was bleeding. She tightened the bandage, tied it off. "You're going to live." He gave a faint nod, eyes drifting shut. "Elena," his voice was almost gone. She leaned closer. "Yeah. If I don't, tell her, my daughter, tell her I fought. Tell her I didn't give in." Her chest ached. She wanted to promise. She wanted to swear, but promises had become curses on her tongue. So she whispered instead, soft but steady, "You'll tell her yourself." Footsteps thundered nearby. Shouts carried through the air. The hunt was closing again. She reloaded her rifle, the metallic click sharp in the night. Her face hardened, but inside, something fragile cracked. She glanced at Singh, bloodied, bruised, but alive. Then back at the dark alleys closing in. She had no choice but to carry him. Because if she let him go, she'd have to face the silence. The silence of the truth she still hadn't spoken. And that was a battle she wasn't ready to fight. Not yet. How long could she carry him before the weight broke her? Captain Elena Varga's back screamed, her muscles raw from dragging Singh through another alley. His arm hung heavy around her neck, his boots barely touching the ground. She tried to ignore the hot stickiness of his blood soaking through her sleeve. She tried to ignore the sting on her cheek where a shard of stone had cut her skin. But the hardest thing to ignore was his silence. "Singh," her voice was a whisper, urgent, "stay with me." A groan, barely. His head lifted for a moment, then sagged again. He was alive, fatting but alive. Her chest burned with relief and dread at the same time. Shouts echoed behind them, boots slapping pavement. The hunt was closing again. She pushed harder, teeth gritted, every step powered by something deeper than strength, defiance. She spotted a doorway half hidden in shadow, its frame cracked, a sign hanging loose. She didn't hesitate. She shouldered the door open and hauled Singh inside. The darkness wrapped around them, thick and silent. Dust floated in the air, stirred by their intrusion. Broken desks, scattered papers, another classroom, another ruin of lives that once lived without war. She lowered Singh against the wall, her knees giving way with him. Her breath tore out ragged. Sweat dripped down her temple. She forced herself to listen. Outside, the footsteps pounded past. The voices thinned, moving deeper down the street. For now they were unseen. Her hands trembled as she pulled at his bandage. Blood seeped fast again, fresh against her fingers. She cursed under her breath. The wound was bad, too bad for the supplies she carried. "Don't you dare quit," she hissed, more to herself than him. His lips parted, a faint smile flickered even through the pain. "Bossy," he murmured. The sound nearly broke her. She pressed fresh gauze, her hands steady by sheer force of will. "Shut up and let me work." For a while there was only their breathing, hers fast, his shallow, the smell of iron thick in the air. Her eyes drifted to the cracked chalkboard still hanging at the front of the room, words scrawled across it, faint under the dust. A math problem, half solved, left there by some child who never came back. Her throat closed. She blinked hard, swallowing the weight in her chest. How many classrooms had she walked into like this? Syria, Iraq, villages torn apart, schools shattered, children's voices silenced, always the same ruins, different dirt. She pressed harder on Singh's wound, her jaw locked. "I'm not letting this place take you too." His eyes opened hazy. "You can't save them all, Captain." The words hit like a blade. She looked at him, anger flashing. "I don't need to save them all, just you, just the ones I can reach." But the anger wasn't at him, it was at herself. Because deep down, she knew what he said was true. She leaned her head back against the wall, closing her eyes for a moment. The exhaustion pressed down heavy, dragging her thoughts into places she didn't want them to go. Her father's funeral again, the folded flag, her mother's empty eyes, her promise never to wear the uniform. And yet she had. She remembered her first deployment, nervous hands hiding in steady gloves. Remembered the first time she wrote a letter to a family, telling them their son wasn't coming home. She hadn't slept for 3 nights after. And she remembered why she kept going back. The silence filled the room. She could hear Singh's shallow breath, her own pulse in her ears. And in that silence she almost spoke. Almost told him the truth. That she wasn't here out of duty. That she wasn't here because of orders. That she was here because she couldn't stop chasing something she'd lost long ago. But the words stuck in her throat. Singh's eyes found hers again. "Why do you keep doing this, Captain?" Her stomach twisted. She forced her expression blank. "Because someone has to." His lips curved faintly like he didn't believe her, but he didn't press. His head tilted, exhaustion pulling him back under. Her chest ached. She wanted to shake him awake. She wanted to scream the truth until her lungs tore. But instead, she sat in silence, pressing her hands against his wound, listening to the night outside grow louder again. The hunt hadn't ended. The boots were returning. Elena exhaled slowly, forcing her breath calm. Her body begged for rest. Her mind begged for escape, but the choice had already been made. She wasn't leaving Singh. Not for orders, not for survival, not for anything. Her rifle lay across her lap, heavy, steady. Her hands were stained with his blood, her heart with the weight of everything she hadn't said. She would carry it, she always carried it. But how much longer could she? The voices outside grew sharper now, closer. Her time was gone. She looked at Singh one last time, whispering so low he couldn't hear, the words only for herself. "I can't lose you too." Then she rose, rifle in hand, footsteps ready to speak louder than silence once again. They were closer than she thought. Elena pressed her back to the wall, breath caught in her throat as a beam of light swept across the broken window. The beam lingered, moved away, then returned. They were searching. Singh stirred, a low groan escaping him. She placed her hand gently over his mouth, whispering, "SHH, just a little longer." The boots scuffed outside, murmured voices in a language she only half understood. She strained to catch words. Nothing clear, just rhythm, just intent. Her rifle felt too loud in her hands, too heavy. She wanted to close her eyes, just for a second, but closing her eyes was death. Through the crack in the wall she saw a shape move past. A soldier, young, too young. His rifle hung low, his head turning quick, nervy. His shoulders hunched like the weight of war was crushing him already. For a heartbeat she saw her brother. No, not her brother, but the same posture, the same nervous hand always twitching near the trigger. Her throat tightened. The boy paused, tilting his head like he'd heard something. Elena froze, her heart hammered. Her finger eased onto the trigger. She could end him. But then what? The shot would echo, the others would pour in. Singh couldn't move, they'd be trapped. And in that second, staring at the boy's wide, restless eyes, she saw the truth. He wasn't the enemy. Not really. He was just another son caught in someone else's war. The decision clawed at her, take the shot, don't take the shot. Her father's voice whispered in her head, every bullet leaves more than a body, it leaves a mark on you. Her hands shook, she lowered the rifle an inch. The boy shifted, adjusting his helmet, then moved on. She sagged against the wall, chest tight. Relief washed over her, but so did guilt. What if sparing him cost Singh his life? Her gaze dropped to Singh again, his lips pale, his breath shallow, his eyes half open, catching her. You should have, his voice broke weak, should have taken him. She shook her head, whispering, not like that, not tonight. He studied her for a long second, then closed his eyes again. Whether he agreed or not, she couldn't tell. The silence stretched until it hurt. She could hear her heartbeat, her father's words still echoing in her head. She remembered the day he left for his last deployment. She was 14. Angry, she told him not to go. He'd crouched down, meeting her eyes, and said, "Duty doesn't wait for permission, Ellie, it waits for courage." She hadn't understood then. She had hated him for it, hated the uniform that took him away. And then the uniform had brought him home in a box. She hadn't touched a rifle for years after. She had sworn she never would. Until one night, years later, when she found herself standing in front of a recruiter's desk. No one had asked her to. No one had pushed her. She just walked in like her legs belonged to someone else. Because deep down she couldn't stand the silence he left behind. Now she was here, in a broken schoolhouse, blood on her hands, her father's words still haunting her. And Singh fatting. Her body screamed for rest, but rest wasn't an option. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead against the cold wall. The chill steadied her. She needed a plan. The radio on her vest was dead. But maybe, just maybe, she could find another. The enemy would have comms. Risky. Impossible, maybe. But it was a thread. She turned to Singh, whispering, "I'll get help." His eyes opened, sharp despite his weakness. "No, you leave, I die here alone." Her chest clenched. "If I don't try, you die anyway." He gripped her wrist with surprising strength. "And if you don't come back?" Her breath caught. His fear was raw, unguarded, not of death but of being abandoned. She covered his hand with hers. "I'll come back." But even as she said it, doubt burned in her gut. She stayed a moment longer, forcing her body calm, then shifted silently to the door. The street outside was moonlit, fractured with shadow. She moved low, quick, every step measured. The voices were closer now. She crept toward them, each footfall a prayer. She saw the group before they saw her, 4 of them, huddled near a rusted truck, their rifles slung, their radios crackling faint static. Too many. She crouched behind rubble, her heart racing. The night smelled of oil and dust. One of them stepped away from the group, muttering something. He lit a cigarette, the glow flaring against his face. His hand shook as he lifted it to his lips. And in that moment, she saw it again, humanity. His shoulders slumped, his eyes tired. Just another soldier trying to steal a breath from the war. But he carried what she needed, a radio strapped to his vest. She clenched her jaw. She didn't want this, but she had no choice. Her hand tightened on her rifle. The decision pressed down heavy. If she took him, the others would hear. If she failed, she'd never see Singh again. Her pulse thundered. She thought of her father, of her promise, of the silence waiting if she lost Singh too. And then she rose from the shadows, steps silent, rifle steady, moving toward a choice that would mark her forever. How quiet could a world become before it broke you? Elena's breath hung shallow in her throat as she crept from the rubble, her rifle steady. The glow of the cigarette still burned bright in the young soldier's hand. He stood apart, back turned, shoulders slouched as if the war itself had bent him. Every step she took forward made her heart pound harder. She didn't want this. God, she didn't want this. But Singh's face flashed in her mind, ashen, fatting, the slow collapse of someone slipping too far. It wasn't a choice, not anymore. The soldier exhaled smoke, looking up at the stars for just a second, like he was searching for home. Elena closed the distance, fast, silent, her hand clamped around his mouth, the other driving the rifle hard against his chest. He stiffened, muffled sound breaking out. Quiet, she hissed low, fierce. He struggled, not much. He was young, tired, surprised. She pulled him into shadow, out of sight from the others, his eyes wide, desperate, darting to hers. And that was the moment that almost undid her. Because in those eyes, she didn't see an enemy. She saw fear. The same fear she had seen in rookies on her first deployment, the same fear she'd felt herself but learned to bury. Her grip trembled, her throat locked. If she let him live, he would shout. The others would come, Singh would die. Her chest burned as she pressed harder, her whisper shaking. I don't want to do this. His breathing came fast, panicked. He shook his head, trying to speak through her hand. She felt the warm tremor of his words against her palm. It hit her, he was begging. Her heart twisted. Her father's voice came back. A soldier isn't just what he kills, he's what he carries after. For a moment she nearly broke, nearly loosened her hold. But then Singh's face returned in her mind, pale lips, labored breath, the promise she made, I'll come back. Her hand moved, sharp, final. The body sagged into her arms, limp, heavier than it should have been. She lowered him to the dirt, chest heaving, her stomach twisted into knots. Her hands shook as she unclipped the radio from his vest. She tried not to look at his face, tried not to see the boy he was. But she couldn't erase the weight of it. The voices from the truck carried over, faint laughter, someone coughing. They hadn't noticed, not yet. She backed away, slow and steady, the radio clutched tight, every muscle taut with fear. Her boots barely kissed the ground. She slipped into shadow, into silence, into escape. Only when she reached the far end of the street did her knees nearly buckle. She crouched, pulling the radio to her chest, pressing her forehead against the cold metal. She wanted to vomit, to scream, to rewind time and make a different choice. But there was no different choice. There was only Singh. She forced herself up, legs trembling, and slipped back into the ruined classroom. Singh's eyes fluttered open as she knelt beside him. Got it, she whispered, voice shaking. We're getting out. He looked at her, searching her face, his lips parted. What did it cost? Her chest hollowed. She didn't answer. She just placed the radio beside him and pressed her bloody hands to his wound again. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence weighed more than the firefight she'd survived. Finally, Singh's voice broke through, rough and faint. Don't carry it alone, Captain. She blinked hard, the sting in her eyes burning. She wanted to say she was, that it was just survival, but the words refused to come. Instead, she turned to the radio, twisting the dial. Static hissed loud, filling the silence. Her fingers shook as she keyed the mic. This is, her throat caught, she swallowed hard. This is Varga, Captain Elena Varga. If anyone reads, we need immediate evac, coordinates to follow. Nothing. Only static. She tried again, louder this time. This is Captain Varga. Repeat, this is Captain Elena Varga requesting emergency extraction. One wounded, I say again, one wounded. Urgent. The static roared back at her. Her shoulders slumped, her chest caved. For a moment she thought the silence had won. And then, a faint crackle, a voice broken through the noise. Copy, repeat last coordinates. Her breath caught, eyes snapping to Singh's. Relief bloomed, but it was fragile, brittle, like glass about to shatter. Singh managed a weak grin. Told you, bossy." Her laugh came out broken, choked, half a sob. She bent her head, pressing her forehead to his for just a second. "Don't you dare quit on me now." But as she relayed their coordinates into the radio, her hand still shook. Not just from exhaustion, not just from fear. From the boy's eyes she couldn't forget. From the weight her father warned her about. From the truth that even if help was coming, something inside her had already broken. And yet she wasn't done, not yet. She tightened her grip on the radio, whispering to herself, "Just a little longer." Because silence had not won. Not tonight. How long could a single night stretch before it felt like a lifetime? Elena crouched over Singh, clutching the radio like a lifeline, the static hissing back at her. Every second dragged like it was made of lead. Her voice was hoarse from repeating their coordinates. Her eyes burned from holding back the tide pressing at the edges of her chest. And Singh, he was fatting. His head lolled against the wall, his breath shallow, lips cracked. She pressed his wound harder, feeling the warmth of life slipping slow between her fingers. "Stay with me," she whispered again, the words trembling now, less an order and more a plea. "Just a little longer. They're coming, you hear me? They're coming." Outside, the voices grew closer. Boots scuffed stone. Radios crackled. The enemy was circling back. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. "Courage doesn't shout, Ellie. Sometimes it just stands its ground." She didn't feel courageous. She felt hollow, broken, but she couldn't let that matter. The radio sputtered again. "Copy Varga, bird inbound, 5 mics, hold position." Her heart leapt and broke at the same time. 5 minutes, an eternity when death was already knocking. She leaned close to Singh. "You hear that? 5 minutes, just 5. His eyes opened a slit, a ghost of a smile. "Bossy." She bit down on the sob that clawed up her throat. "Damn right." The boots were louder now, too loud. Shadows moved outside the broken window. They couldn't wait 5 minutes in silence, not with enemy closing in. She had to choose. Leave Singh hidden, draw the enemy away. Risk never making it back. Or stay, fight, and bring them both down when rescue was so close she could almost feel the rotor wash. Her body screamed to run. Her heart refused. She shifted, pressing her rifle against her shoulder, every nerve sparking alive. The door creaked. A shadow slipped through. 1 soldier, then 2, their rifles up, sweeping the room. Elena's pulse thundered in her ears. She lowered her breath to nothing. Her footsteps whispered against the floor. The first soldier's beam of light caught Singh's body, slumped against the wall. Elena stepped out of shadow, silent, precise. The rifle cracked once, then twice. The echoes roared in the small space, deafening. 1 soldier fell. The other shouted, firing wild, the bullets ripping plaster, sparks spitting. Elena dropped low, firing back steady, teeth gritted. The second man staggered, collapsed. Silence crashed down again, heavy and absolute. Her lungs burned. Her hands shook. The gun felt heavier than it ever had. She turned back to Singh. His eyes were wide, but his chest still rose. He was alive. She dropped to her knees beside him, whispering, "We're not done, not yet." The sound came before the sight, the distant thrum of rotor blades. Low, growing, like thunder rolling closer. Relief tore through her, so hard her eyes blurred. She stumbled to the doorway, rifle still raised, scanning the street. Dust swirled under moonlight, stirred by the approach. But the enemy wasn't done either. More shadows moved at the far end of the street, rifles glinting, closing. Her body sagged with exhaustion. She had nothing left. And still she lifted her rifle, planting her boots in the doorway, blocking the only path to Singh. Her father again, his voice not memory now but presence. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. She breathed once, twice, and stood tall. The chopper roared overhead, spotlight cutting the street open. Gunfire cracked, suppressive bursts from above. The enemy scattered, ducking into alleys. Two silhouettes dropped from ropes, sprinting toward her, friendly. Elena's knees almost gave. Relief swept so hard it hurt. They reached her, voices urgent, hands steady. One grabbed Singh, hoisting him with practiced strength. The other clasped her arm. "You good, Captain?" She nodded, though every inch of her screamed otherwise. Her throat was too tight for words. They carried Singh out, Elena stumbling after, her rifle hanging loose at her side. The night wind whipped as the chopper's rotors churned dust into a storm. She climbed aboard last, collapsing into the metal belly, her hand still clinging to Singh's shoulder like letting go would kill him. The bird lifted, the ground dropping away. The ruined streets shrank beneath them. The war grew smaller, but the weight in her chest didn't. She looked down at Singh, unconscious now but alive. She looked at her hands, blood-stained, trembling. And she thought of the boy with the cigarette, the one who would never see home again. She closed her eyes. For the first time all night, she let the silence come. Not the silence of death, not the silence of fear. The silence of knowing she had stood, carried, chosen. Her father was gone, but his words remained. And in that silence she understood. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. The bird roared into the night sky, carrying her forward, carrying her burdens with it, carrying the silence that would never leave her.